Make this holiday season one to remember with Goldbelly, your one-stop shop for America's most iconic foods shipped nationwide. From the original turducken to the viral pie Kagan with decadent layers of Kagan pie, Goldbelly has everything to wow your guests with the click of a button. And with Black Friday around the corner, it's the perfect time to pre-order unique gifts that ship right to their door. Use promo code GIFT for 20% off your first order on goldbelly.com. The holidays have never been easier.
Well, Mars is square Pluto, and it's affecting my Pluto, so that's my Monday.
What does that mean?
Difficulty. No, I mean it can mean any number of things, but it's a stressful, friction-inducing kind of a transit, energizing and difficult.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay, well, I feel like we're already in it, but let's just back up a little, maybe just do our quick intro, and then we'll get right back in.
Oh, that was weird. After I sneezed, it smelled weird.
Sometimes when I rub my nose, I can like smell the inside of my nose, and it smells weird.
Yeah, it's sometimes when I sneeze, I feel like I smell pollen, and I feel like pollen is just like stuck in my nose. And it's
that makes sense.
Also, I hope that's not like a sign that I'm dying or something. Anyway,
welcome to Witchcast.
Welcome to Witchcast.
'Cause it's Witchcast.
That's Emily.
That's Kate.
And we're your hosts of the Witchcast podcast.
We're your hosts. We're here. We are
learning
novice-ish witches.
Yeah.
We are
creepy toddlers.
Creepy toddlers. We are. We're doing this podcast to learn more about everything that's out there in our witchy, pagan, Wiccan, witchcrafty world.
Mystic,
Whatever you got, we're interested.
Anything under that umbrella or adjacent to that umbrella, we're interested in and want to learn more. And we're trying to keep ourselves honest by doing a new episode every week and inviting you to learn along with us.
Yeah, come join us, learn with us, and we bring in guests.
We bring in really cool guests who know more than us, like this awesome person. Durgadas. Alan Duriel is back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So Durgadas was our Astrology 101 guest back in our first season. And
now he's back, and we're getting
deeper. He's here for a second.
We're getting our hands dirty with some birth
deeper
charts.
dive. But we'll talk more about all the ways to follow and learn more about Durgadas. But we were just talking earlier before we started recording how prolific you are as a witch, and it's so admirable. Like your social media presence, the graphics that you create. Your book is coming out soon. When is that coming out?
Thank you. It's coming out March 8th.
Yay, so soon.
We're very excited.
Yeah, on Llewellyn, right?
Yeah, Llewellyn.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really excited too.
I mean, you're just killing it right now. So we really are super grateful that you took time out of your schedule to talk with us again.
Thank you. No, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Very excited.
And so this week, today, in this episode, we're going to dive a little deeper, like we said, but specifically looking at birth charts. That's a pretty big, would you say like a roadmap of astrology?
Well, you could say it's the roadmap of... I don't know that I would say it's kind of like the blueprint.
Okay.
It's like a blueprint.
That's better.
Cool.
Yeah, for each person.
That's sexier.
Yeah, that's sexier, yeah.
Although it's like a variable blueprint, so...
Yeah, well, it's more involved. Kind of like a blueprint.
Yeah.
So, for people who maybe haven't listened to our first episode, and if you haven't, like with Durgadas, I mean, and if you haven't, shame on you, go back and listen to that.
Go check it out. You're missing out.
Can you speak more about your background and also how you use birth charts in your work, and when did you first kind of look into your own birth chart?
Sure, yeah. So my background in terms of astrology, which I think is probably an easier place to start, is that once upon a time in the early 2000s, I was in a Hermetic order, and I learned a lot of really cool stuff. It was a super intensive training program. It was honestly a level of intensity that I almost never see, which is part of the reason why I wrote my book. A lot of stuff that I'm free to talk about, it was like a secret organization, but what I am free to talk about, I talk about a lot in the book. But the teacher there was an astrologer. So one of the fun things for me about my passion for astrology is that I don't really know that it's something I think that I would have organically gotten as into as I did, but the teacher was so into it, and she talked about it all the time, and we had astrological workshops with prominent astrologers, and we would all, as students, talk about our astrology together. So it was really an immersive learning environment. And I took to it really quickly, and then I started studying it, and I was able to do some sort of semi-apprenticeship work. I mean, I call it that. I don't really know what else to call it, like with working with astrology, with the teacher, and with some other people there. And then that was when I really just got a feel for it and got the basics down, and have kind of studied it off and on ever since then, very on the last few years. And in terms of, okay, what was your other question? It was, how did I get, what's my history, and then what was a birth chart?
Oh, yeah, I guess, I feel like you answered, but I would love, when did you first kind of create your, I guess you would have created your own birth chart when you were in the Hermetic order, right?
Yeah, so, right. Okay, so one of the cool things about the order that I was in is because the teacher actually was an astrologer, we were really encouraged to book readings with her. And so my relationship with working with my own birth chart really began with that reading. I had had my chart done once before, just after high school, but I really didn't remember much of what that astrologer said to me. And that astrologer was also like a psychic astrologer, so she also said a lot of things that aren't necessarily in the chart. And then after I had my chart done by my teacher at the time, well, then that became this learning almost syllabus or map or curriculum or however you want to look at it while I was training there. So we were always sort of contextualizing what we were learning personally within the chart. And we each had mentors in that program, so I would talk about my chart with my mentor. And I think that one of the things that's fascinating about birth chart astrology is that I feel like no matter how often I look at my birth chart, I still see new things, even all these years later. Now we're talking 15 years later. I still find new things that are really significant that I never noticed before.
Wow.
And so what I would say was happening then is, at first I would learn, okay, I have a sun in Cancer. What does that mean? Right. Oh, I have a moon in Libra. What does that mean? And then eventually I found out, oh, I have a moon conjunct Pluto. What does that mean? And right. I would discover these things about myself in my chart, as it was really important for me to work on them. But I think that the birth chart can hold so much significance depending on what we're looking at it for. And as with anything, with astrology, with tarot, the level of depth that we get from it, I think, is directly correlated to the level of depth we approach it from. Mm-hmm. So you can look at your birth chart as this call to inner alchemy, or you can look at it as like, well, how am I in a relationship? Or like, what kind of job would be good for me to have, right? Like there's all these levels of depth. And I think that there's really no bottom to that rabbit hole. I will say though that, it depends on the kind of astrology that you're doing. People take different approaches. I've started calling myself a classical modern astrologer. And what I mean by that is that, so in the last, I don't know, however many years, ever since probably Pluto was downgraded as a planet, and maybe even before, there's been a lot of talk in astrology about what do we do, right? Because there are other planetoids or dwarf planets that are bigger than Pluto. So then why aren't we working with them? And maybe we should be, and some people are. And then some people have said, oh, well, we should just go back to what we were doing before. It wasn't broken. So there's been a big movement to return to classical astrology, to go back to just using the 7 planets instead of the others. And I call myself a classical modern astrologer because I'm still using the system I learned in 2005. I feel like it worked really well then. It works really well now. I have a bit of an if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, for example, I use Pluto exactly as I did then. But people use the charts differently, and people use different house systems as well. So my experience, though, and I have a lot of friends who practice Vedic astrology, and somehow mysteriously, even using different systems, even using different zodiacs, there's still a lot of thematic overlap. So it all still manages to sort itself out. And I think that's part of the mystery of how astrology actually works, is that I think that it works because of some kind of metaphysical alignment or process that is greater than what we can really rationally understand. Like, I think when people look for an explanation for astrology through physics, like sometimes people will try to say like, oh, well, it's like gravity. And I think that if that's true, I don't think we're anywhere near really understanding how that actually works. And so to me, because I feel like that, I don't think that's how it works. It works. Like, it doesn't need that kind of a justification. And so it works out really well for me as I learned it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so great.
Thanks.
That's beautiful.
So astrology is like an art and a science, and the part of it that's like an art is very interpretive.
Yeah.
And is a lot about what the individual astrologer sees. And I can even say with my own biases that I have a psychotherapy background. I'm really into personal transformation, and I'm really into mysticism and metaphysics, and that's what I tend to focus on when I look at someone's chart. Whereas an astrologer who's more interested in day-to-day career, relationship, health is going to notice other things and emphasize other things.
Yeah.
That's
and can
really
I just
beautiful.
say, that is really beautiful. I loved the phrase like inner alchemy that you were talking about earlier, like doing inner alchemy. That's such a cool.
That is a really cool
concept or way of putting that.
Well, I can't take credit for coining it. It definitely is used in Taoist practice and other Hermetic practice, but I do talk about it extensively in my book.
Yay.
So,
which you can buy. You can pre-order now on Llewellyn.
You can on Llewellyn or at Amazon, and if you pre-order it at Amazon, they do this lowest price guarantee, which is really cool. So whatever they end up selling it for, up until the time that you buy it, is the price that you will get.
Oh, nice. Well, we'll definitely, of course, link to it again on it's already on our Witchy Resources tab on our site.
Thank you.
And then we'll make sure to tag it in our Instagram too, because I love the way that you speak about all of your practice. I it's funny. We've been learning so much over the last, several episodes,
many,
a lot of episodes.
Very many episodes.
I was trying to do the math in my head of how many we've done so far, but
I think this might be number
total.
It's in the 20s.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot. And I mean, it's only been a few months, but what I love that idea too of, even though astrology from one angle, like you said, can seem very scientific and very mathematical of like, this is where the planets, this is where this is how they're lining up. This, like, there's all of these kind of chartable, tangible things, but at the same time, there is that element of mysticism and beyondness that in the unknowingness, that is really also really beautiful. That makes it a part of what I think is the witch world. Like, it is all, and we talked with a guest about numerology recently, and we were talking about that, and tarot as well, right? Like, these are all tools to help us kind of decipher this like great mystery of life.
Yeah, well, it comes down so much to interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and one thing I would say about astrology too that I've really been grooving on for about the past year, that I just think is so beautiful. And this is paralleled in other systems of astrology too. It's just not described exactly the same way, because the symbolism sometimes is different. But is that, okay, so as energy is moving and manifesting, it always follows the same pattern. So the signs, the order of the signs, right, that is always the flow that energy takes. So how it manifests can vary. Of course, no two winters are exactly the same, right? But winter always comes. And so that, I think, is just this beautiful thing about the flow of astrology, is that it's always going from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer and through the whole cycle and again. And so it's this beautiful, there's this rhythm to the movement of the planets through the signs and the different configurations. And, it's that expression, the music of the spheres. But it's really amazing to actually think that is the progression that things are following through. And you do see this in other systems of astrology, like the Maya system of astrology. They use different symbolism in a different cycle. I think they have 3 wheels that all work together. But there is this notion that there are patterns and cycles and processes And it's just, that's where we start to talk about mystical stuff, right? And it's just, I don't know. There's so much you can do with that.
Right.
And those, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and those patterns are seen on multiple levels. Like the sun spends a whole year going through all of the signs. The moon spends about a month going through all of the signs. And so you see them playing out in different ways at different times in different planets. And then as that's happening, the planets line up with each other and create relationships that are meaningful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really gorgeous. When you describe it, it's really gorgeous.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You
I
were
was
gonna
just
say.
going to say, I mean, it's almost, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. You're the expert. But to me, it sounds like, you know, in some ways, like there's that flow of energy reflects in like human behavior and how, and like in ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then it's also like on a grander scale,
Absolutely.
like talking about those bigger wheels that keep turning. Like people talk about generations and how generations start to repeat
Yes,
themselves in
yeah.
some ways, where there's different kinds of generations and like this one follows this
Absolutely.
one follows this one.
Yeah. Right. Totally. Yeah, it's a really good example of the maxim as above, so below, and how that plays out on different levels. Because, right, yeah, like the moon does all it's going to do. Each month it goes through all the signs. But then Pluto can take, oh my God, 240 years, up to 240 years, I think. Uranus is 84. So 84 years to go through the signs. So some of us don't even see, you know, more than half of that. So it's very amazing. And there are generational planets, or planets that are considered to be more generational, the ones that move more slowly, and ones that are more intimate and quick. Yeah. It's fascinating.
We're
Love
Stardust. We're all Stardust. Okay,
We're all
so
Stardust.
backing up a little bit, we have a lot of
Yeah.
viewers. I feel like we have
Listeners.
a lot of listeners.
Viewers.
Yeah, viewers. They watch our podcast with their ears. I feel like we have a good section of our listeners are actually experienced and practicing witches who are listening in to kind of just, you know, get here just for fun and like want to learn more, or like hear other people's perspectives and learn from our guests. But I do believe we have a good section of listeners who actually are either not practicing yet but interested.
Sure.
So if they're, for our listeners who do want to get their birth chart,
Right.
short of going to an astrologer, there's a lot of different sites online.
Yeah.
What would be your recommendation would be the best route for someone to go who really wants to get their birth chart made?
Yeah, so I usually send people to astro.com. You can also go to the Time Passages app on the phone.
Okay. I don't know that one.
Yeah, you can also do Cafe Astrology.
Yeah.
Their website. I feel like, and Astro-Seek is a good website too. I also write a semi-monthly astrology blog for the new moon and full moon on Pathos on the Modern Witch imprint. And I get a lot of the information I use from the transits. AstroSeek has this really nice calendar where they just lay out all the transits for the month, and you can just look at it and be like, oh, okay. So
Nice.
But they're another. AstroSeek is nice too, and Cafe Astrology, because they will actually give you a free interpretation of your whole chart.
Yeah.
And I think Time Passages, I don't know if it's free, but if it costs money, it doesn't cost very much money for your own chart. So the one thing I would say though about that is that we have to be careful when we get canned interpretations of things, because really it's important to look at the chart contextualized within itself.
Yeah.
So like Sun in Scorpio means one thing or many things, but like it means something else if it is squared by a Leo moon, for example. So that's
Who's that?
I know, and who could that be? So that's
It's Emily.
it's yeah. Well, but it's interesting because your moon actually doesn't square your sun properly because it's too late in Leo and too early in Scorpio. But that's the kind of stuff that when people read about astrology and they go, oh, this doesn't fit me, usually what's not fitting is the kind of boilerplate canned material
Right.
that isn't addressing the individual chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that I always struggle with, because I feel like you probably get it a lot, but there's a lot of people who are like, well, astrology is bullshit. It's mostly guys. And it's just, I think we talked about this last episode too, but it's so hard to be like, but there's so much more to it. You just don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I always say like, I'm always saying like, in case you're, feeling that way, it's also like, it's a self-reflection tool. And if the answer is that it isn't fitting you, ask yourself why, and what does fit you? What is your gut telling you then?
Yeah.
Like, learn something,
Yeah.
take the opportunity and learn something then.
Right.
Don't be just a dick, Chad.
And and I would say too that I think that oftentimes, I think you were just saying this too, that when it doesn't fit, it's usually because there are other factors in the chart that are not being acknowledged that affect something. So for example, I have a Cancer sun. Cancers are known for being really moody. And I'm not trying to say I'm never moody. I can certainly be moody, but I have a lot of planets in Libra, and Libra squares Cancer, and Libra is just not cool with the moodiness that Cancer wants to indulge in. Like Libra's like, no, we don't do this. This is not what we do. Or at the very least, this is not something we involve other people in. Like Libra is really big on appearances. And so if you have a sun in Cancer, if I just was going off of what it says about sun in Cancer, I'd be like, well, I don't really feel like I am moody, or I don't really feel like I'm like emotionally manipulative with my partners. But then if I look at the rest of my chart and I see all the Libra there, I can go, oh, well, that makes sense though, because I have such a heavy weightedness toward Libra, and Libra is not going to do all of those things. So that doesn't make me not a Cancer, but how I'm a Cancer is very different from just the straight up canned example of what a sun in Cancer is.
Right.
The only time that you really find people who tend to be the straight up representation of the prototype are like if their moon is also in their sun sign, and especially if they're conjunct. So people who are born on a new moon sometimes are very much like the prototype, but even then, not necessarily, because they can have a lot of other stuff going on. Like we were just talking about Libra, I know people who have like Libra rising or a Libra moon, but then they also have like a sun in Aries or Mars in Aries, and then that shifts the Libra dynamic, because Mars in Aries will do things that Libra is not necessarily going to do.
Right.
And so this is where it's important to understand the whole chart.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally, absolutely. And I think to your earlier point, or to that point too, even the canned responses, if you're reading your whole chart, if you're going through and reading, okay, my moon is in Aries or whatever else, isn't necessarily going to tell you how that relates to everything else. So there's some interpretation you have to do yourself, or ask a professional.
And you remind me, you do readings, birth chart readings for people?
I do. Yeah, I do. And they can, if people are interested in a natal chart reading, they can read about it more on my website. Cool. But yeah, I do. I don't do a ton of them right now.
I was going to say, you're so busy. I wasn't sure if you're still doing
very busy. Yeah, but I do them.
Yeah. I think that's probably, if you really want a true, if you're really interested in this and really want like a true reading, because a machine is not going to give you that context.
Right. It's true. And what a
astrologer.
machine can't do that I or another astrologer can do is I can say, well, this is an art and a science. So if I say something about moon in Leo and it's not clicking with you, then I can shift gears and say something else about it. Like I can modulate to other things that it could mean, or other ways that it can manifest. And that I think is one of the bigger differences. Or I can look at something else in the chart and try to see, oh, well, maybe this is shifting some of that.
Right.
Whereas, with the computer printout, actually what I honestly recommend people do if they are starting with computer-based chart interpretations is to get 2 of them. So Cafe Astrology has one that's free, and AstroSeek has one that's free, and to get one from each site and then read them concurrently. And then you'll be able to see a little bit where the person who wrote it is interpreting based on their perspective versus sort of presenting the more general, constant information.
Right.
Because some of it is consistent. Like Mercury is always going to be about the intellect and communication. You know, Mars is always going to be about assertiveness and aggression. But then where we embellish on the keywords is where individual astrologers interpret, and it becomes more of an art form.
I love that.
So yeah. So now let's say we do that and we read through our charts and we read our interpretations. How else, let's say maybe we want to teach ourselves how to read our own chart more, like by ourselves without an astrologer's help. What would you suggest would be the first step?
Astrology is jargon,
Yeah.
but it's very much a language. And if you know certain basic terms, then you can understand the gist of most of it. So the comparison I like to use for this is that if you are learning English, you can learn the word red, but there's also all these other names for the color red, right? Like crimson and I think carmine, maybe. Is that red? Is that a color?
Carmine sounds right.
That sounds right. Let's go with that.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
all right. So, but crimson is one, you know. And the thing is, so astrology can get so specific that you can learn about the 800 different types of red. But if you haven't memorized the word red, that's not going to be very helpful for you if you're trying to have a conversation about astrology or just understand it. So what I recommend that people do is that they memorize the basics of what do the planets basically signify? What do the houses basically signify? What do the aspects basically signify? You know, what do the signs basically signify? And then once you have that down, just some key words about each of them, then you can kind of understand. So you'll know like, oh, red. This is red. This is green. And then once you can understand that, then someone can start getting into more depth and detail about, oh, this is like hunter green, and that means blah, 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 right? So I think what happens a lot with astrology is people will start adding depth and texture before they have the basics down. But if they just get the core basics down, then they have the framework to understand the gist of most of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes
That's
perfect
a
sense.
very
that-
great way to put it.
And that gist, those basics, it's really not more than like 50 things. And a lot of them relate to each other. So for example, Pluto is the planet that rules the sign of Scorpio. And Pluto and Scorpio together rule the 8th house. So if you know about Pluto, you know about Scorpio. And if you know about Pluto and Scorpio, you know about the 8th house. It's not an exact one-to-one, but there's a lot of overlap. So it's actually not even that hard of a system to learn. It's just, now that's a car. So that's a motorcycle, actually. I'm going to start over.
Now
So
that's
it's-
a car. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's not even that complicated of a system to learn. But what happens, I think, is if you don't know where to start, then people just start with, oh, what's my sun sign? Oh, there's a moon sign? What's that? Oh, you know, and that's kind of cool, but it's not necessarily efficient. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
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 People are trying to get to puce before they've even talked about purple.
Puce.
I just wanted to say the word puce because it's like my favorite color. No, I'm just kidding.
Puce
It's not.
is your favorite color.
I just like the word.
What shade is puce?
Puce is like a, it's like a pucey color.
Okay.
I feel like once
like-
upon a time, puce was in like all kinds of movies. Like
Yeah.
they were talking about puce.
That's how I learned about it. It was like in one of those like children's books that I read, like a
Yeah.
dark red or purple brown color.
It's sort of a brown, I
Yeah.
would say, a reddish brownish.
Well, it's like in the 80s, there was this whole thing where everybody was falling into quicksand on television shows
yeah.
somehow. Anyway.
So much more quicksand is what I expected in my life.
Oh God! Its origins are from the color of blood stains on linen and bed sheets from flea bites.
Oh no.
Wonderful.
It's
That's
the
so
French
gross.
word for flea. Ew! I don't like it anymore. I don't like it anymore. Never mind. Also, can we talk about houses? Because that's just one thing I.
Yeah, we should
Sure.
also just talk about what is in a birth chart.
Yeah, what is
and
in a
what you're
birth
looking at
chart?
when you
There's so
actually see
much
it.
in there. Yeah.
Right.
What do
Yeah.
why don't we start with just talking
I'm
about what a
overwhelmed.
natal chart is?
Yeah.
Like you,
Sure.
let's say that you've got co-star or something like that, and it just tells you like 8 Pluto or like 8 Scorpio or whatever else.
Right.
Can you talk through just quickly, with apologies for making you do basic 101-ish kind of work?
No problem.
Talk through the different houses and just what, because I know that they each have sort of a personality and a sun sign that they're sort
Sure.
of associated-ish with, but, or just, yeah, you talk.
Yeah, okay. So we'll just start with the birth chart is a map of the sky and where the planets are at the time of your birth. And so the house divisions, we divide the sky into 12 sections. Now, how those 12 houses are defined depends on the system that you are using. So I use a system that works with Placidus houses, and that is just one way that the 12 sections are created. There's also a system called, and that's kind of complicated to explain, but there's a system called whole sign houses where each sign gets its own house, and that starts with whatever, and that's actually very popular right now among a lot of astrologers. So that starts with whatever house, whatever sign is at the rising sign becomes the first house, and then it goes on from there. But so the 12 houses correspond with different areas of life. It goes in order of the signs, and so the first house corresponds with Aries and the personality. The second house corresponds with Taurus and our possessions, our resources, our values. Financial stuff is often represented there. Our third house corresponds with Gemini and Mercury. So the second house is Venus, Taurus. First house, Aries, Mars. The third house corresponds with communication, the mind, the intellect, but also, and this is where it's like, I don't really use it this much this way, but it's classical, like siblings, short journeys. I actually think in today's world, there's an even greater way of understanding the third house than ever before, because I think social media is very much connected to the third house. Like that type of communication to me is very third house. Fourth house is family. It is also, some say, the shadow, because it's the part of the chart that is the deepest within ourselves. So the bottom half of the chart is more inward and the upper half of the chart is more outward.
And that relates to Cancer?
Yes, Cancer and the moon, which is the planet that rules Cancer.
I'm getting this. Oh, it's all clicking. Click, click. Keep going. I
Yeah,
love this.
and so the fifth house is creativity and creative self-expression, also pleasure, and that corresponds with Leo and the sun. The sixth house is health, work, and service. It corresponds with Virgo and Mercury. Mercury is shared between Virgo and Gemini, and Venus is shared between between Taurus and Libra. The seventh house corresponds to relationships, partnerships. Some say like close friends and open enemies, contracts, and that is Libra. Also Venus shared with Taurus. And one thing I would say about that, so the cusp of the first house, which is also what your rising sign is, or your ascendant, which tells a lot about your personality. And then the cusp of the seventh house is called your descendant, and that tells a lot about how you are in relationships. And the thing about the first house, or the ascendant, that I'll just say very quickly, is that some people describe that as the mask. And my thing about that is we have to understand, though, that there is nothing fake about representing yourself via your ascendant. Your ascendant is how you come across to other people, like casually or when you first meet them, unless it's in a business context. Or it's like a public figure context. It's not that. That's the 10th house cusp. But the ascendant is like the outer layers of your personality. So the way I like to describe it is like the skin of your being. Like your skin is very much you, but it's not the vital organs, right? So that to me is the ascendant.
I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
a lot less judgy.
Yes, that's the thing, is that sometimes the way the ascendant is described, people think, well, am I not supposed to be like my ascendant? Am I being fake if I'm being like, is it like
Right.
insincere? And it's like, no, like this is you. It's the skin of you.
Yeah.
It's not the depth of you.
It's
Yeah.
part of your chart. It's a part of who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the 8th house is the house of Scorpio, And here we find death, shared resources, sex. But it's not just like casual random sex. It's like Holy Mother of God sex. That's the kind of 8th house experience. It's that deep intimacy. And it can also relate to just other intense areas of mysticism. Underworld journeys can correspond to the 8th house. It's ruled by Pluto. The 9th house is Sagittarius. Jupiter is the planet that rules. Here we find philosophy, philanthropy, higher education, ethics, also publishing. And it's so if the 3rd house, which is Gemini, is like short trips, the 9th house sometimes is long trips. And that's kind of one of the main differences. So the polarity between Gemini and Sagittarius is that these are both super curious signs. Gemini wants to like read the whole encyclopedia. Sagittarius wants to like spend a year studying one thing in Tibet. And 10th house is your career, your reputation, your public sense of self, like how you're represented publicly in more of a career sort of way. And the cusp of the 10th house is called the midheaven. The 11th house is, some say goals and hopes and wishes, but it's also like the house of friends and associates. So it's often very much how you are with your friends, what you do with friends, what you do in a community, an intimate kind of community. And then the 12th house is the house of the unconscious, dreams. Some say the subconscious, the unseen, mysticism, mystical experiences. So if we look at, I was talking earlier about patterns. If we look at the house system in terms of the motion of energy between the signs as the planets move through the signs, as the planets move through the sky, the 12th house is very much like I like to call it, and I like to say this of the sign Pisces too, which corresponds to the 12th house as well as the planet Neptune, that the 12th house is like the last scene of the movie in the credits. So it's like you die in the 12th house and then you go to whatever you go to. And then the first house is birth in Aries. Aries starts the cycle again. And so there is also a way when learning this, or just for fascination's sake, to look at the story told by the progression through the houses and how we develop in certain ways. And that also parallels the way we develop in the signs. Aries starts and we're very much an infant, very much all about ourselves, and it just goes from there.
Yes, all Aries are babies. That is correct. Just kidding. But it's so funny. You said just a little bit ago that if you knew the signs, you could
Right.
know the houses. And
A lot about
I
them, yeah.
have, and I love astrology memes, and I love astrology from a very like pop culture-y, like internet, social media standpoint. And
Right.
so I've, of course, have memorized kind of the basic stereotypes of each sign. And so as you were
Right.
saying each house, I was like, oh yeah, got
Yes.
it. Check.
So one of the easiest ways I think to learn planet signs and houses is that the planet is sort of the raw force or the psychological area, right? People will say Mercury is the mind, Venus is affection, beauty, the feelings, values, the romantic feelings or relational feelings. But then the sign is like, if that planet became a person, that would be the sign. So if Pluto became a person, it would be a Scorpio. And if that person built a house is full of the things that they're drawn to and fascinated by, that would be the 8th house. So that's where you see Scorpio, death, the occult, sexuality, intensity, emotional intensity, and you find all of that in the 8th house.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of, also, side note, I told this to Emily, and I've always stood by this. I think Scorpio is probably the most intimidating sign of the zodiac to me. And I'm a rising Scorpio, but for the longest time before I even knew that I was a rising Scorpio, I still, as a Sagittarius sun, Scorpio's always just mystified me.
Right. Well, you're not just a rising Scorpio. You have 3 planets in Scorpio,
Yeah, you're
too.
like more Scorpio than I am.
I know. And it's what I was scared of the whole time was inside me all along.
That's what I told
Well,
Kate. I was like, it's
but-
yourself.
But here's the thing I would say about that, though, is that, I think I have one thing in Scorpio. I have one thing in Scorpio, but I have a ton of really tight Pluto aspects and really intense Pluto aspects. So Plutonian energy is very much a part of my life, even though it doesn't manifest in exactly the same way. So Pluto is a planet that calls us to really face ourselves, face our shadow, face the intense parts of life, the difficult parts of life. And just because you're a Scorpio or just because you have really prominent Plutonian aspects does not mean you're not still intimidated by that. It doesn't mean that you're not still afraid of it. It just means that part of you is really drawn to it and kind of can't get away from it in a way that other people can. You know, and I think that that's one of the things that's really beautiful about astrology. It's funny because people think that astrology stereotypes, and at its most superficial level, it does. But when we look at it more deeply and precisely and get to the level of birth chart astrology, what we find is actually it shows how people are so strikingly different from each other. And then it gives us the permission to be ourselves, even if the culture that we exist in does not affirm that. So for example, as a Cancer sun, okay, I grew up being the kind of kid who cries all the time. I mean, I was just always crying, and that was really beaten out of me. Like, not an understatement. That was just so taken out of me. And when I got really into astrology, one of the parts of it that was super healing was that I came to appreciate that I'm supposed to be that sensitive. I'm supposed to be really emotional. Now, it's good for me to have coping skills so I'm not like a sopping mess, and I do have them, but I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the cultural context I was in had inclined me to try to numb myself to my feelings and really shut down. And I did. And let me tell you, and Emily might know this as well, like, I don't know, just based on your experience, but when you are a water sign and you shut down your emotions or you try to shut down your emotions, usually you end up with health problems or other kinds of issues because that is not a floodgate you can close.
Yeah, it
And
comes
so-
back at you one way or
Right,
another.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's no, but that's not going to be true for someone who does not have a water heavy chart. So this is where we see where it gets super individual. You know, somebody who's got a Taurus moon and an Aries sun and a Leo rising
Oof.
is not going to be having
That sounds like a very scary
The-
person, but
well no, but
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
they're not going to be drawn to the types of stuff or having the types of experiences that I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
you know,
No,
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's delightful in their own way.
Yeah, no, it's fun to joke. It's fun to jab. No, that's really beautiful. Honestly, there've been like 5 times already in this conversation where I've been like bookmarking in my brain of like that would make a great pull quote.
Yeah.
You're so eloquent. You're so well spoken,
you.
Dirgas.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
also.
you very much.
Oh, sorry. I'm also loving the idea of houses as physical houses that are decorated, like as a kind of a visual.
Were you
person.
creating them in your
Yeah,
head?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like that makes perfect sense. You can walk through the houses and be like,
I-
this
Right.
is.
I also love the idea of the journey. When you were talking about that reminded
Yeah.
me of kind of the journey of the major arcana and tarot.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that
Yeah.
related?
Yeah, well, so with the tarot, what happened is the Golden Dawn took the system, and I want to say
We know
Eliphas
them.
Levi started this first, but Hermetic practitioners in the late 1700s and then eventually the 1800s and the late 1800s. And if the Golden Dawn didn't start it, but I think they finished it. So they put the cards on the Tree of Life, and they also put the astrology signs with the cards. And so there's some variations between systems, but yes, generally speaking, if you go through the major arcana, you go through the elements, you go through the planets, you go through the signs, and it is a progression. And a lot of them make such powerful sense. Like the Empress is Venus, Justice is Libra,
Yeah.
you know, Leo is the Strength card, the woman with the lion.
Yes.
You know, and it's really so that is a whole other thing. But the system of Hermetic Kabbalah with the tarot and with astrology is, I think, so beautiful and so elegant, and I do love that. And you absolutely can work with tarot and astrology. It's not always like a perfect fit, but I feel like it fits really well most of the time. this is one of those things, to what we were talking about much earlier, where I would say it's good to have the basics down first. What is Jupiter? What is the moon? What is the sign of Cancer? And then after you have that down, embellishing with, oh, where is it in the tarot? And where is that on the Tree of Life? And how does that all fit together? Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I was having one of those, like, you know, the GIF where
let
it's
the
Zach
record show
Galifianakis.
that Kate was making Mind Explosion.
What was that?
Oh.
And
No,
then there
it's-
was an
yeah,
actual
it's like
explosion
where
outside.
like the
maybe.
math formulas all like coming together in front of my mind, and I'm like, I get
yeah.
it.
Yeah. She was having
Because we
a
did a
Yeah.
whole
moment.
episode about Hermetic Kabbalah recently this
cool.
season
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
It's
so-
also wild, that we've
It's
come
all
so far that
connected.
as you're talking, like, I know what you're talking
we're
about.
like, yes, wow, we know
We've
what you're
come so
talking
far.
about. We've come
Well,
so
you know,
far.
the thing I have to say about Hermetic Kabbalah, and maybe, I don't know, I have like 3 other books that maybe one day I want to write, and one of them that I potentially want to write is one that really makes it more accessible, because I feel like over the last few years I've gotten so into the Hermetic Kabbalah practitioners of like the mid 1910s and before and a little bit after, and like I love their work so much. So like Dion Fortune and Israel Regardie, and Aleister Crowley and McGregor Mathers to a lesser degree. But I really love some of their work so much, but I also majored in English, so it's like I can read it without needing a dictionary. You know what I mean? Like, it's dense, and it's
so
you have
dense.
right, and it's not very approachable if you haven't studied that kind of material before. And so that is something where one day, maybe, hopefully, I think it would be cool to try to make a really accessible guide to some of that, because when you start studying it, it is really beautiful. I will say though that I think it's like reading Shakespeare, where you start and for the first like 10 pages or whatever, you're just like totally lost, but then something clicks and you're like, oh, okay, like I actually can read this. And then like 10 pages later, you're like, oh, okay, no, not like really can read. Like you get your system of like looking up words that you don't know, and then all of a sudden. So I think it's kind of like that. But there's so much beauty and depth to it. And actually, I will say, Llewellyn is coming out with a encyclopedia of ceremonial magic next year, and hopefully, knock on wood, it will be a much more accessible approach to this material. And I guess I should also say too that Lon Milo Duquette wrote a book called The Chicken Kabbalah that a lot of people like, that is also an accessible approach to Kabbalah,
The chicken
Hermetic Kabbalah. Yeah.
Chicken Kabbalah.
Okay, we'll have to check that out. Also, very exciting about that encyclopedia.
Right, yeah.
I know. I'm really excited for that. I haven't seen it yet, and I hope it's as cool as it sounds.
That's really cool.
Awesome.
Okay, going back to charts. Thank you,
Yes.
by the way, for breaking down those houses with
Sure.
along the planets and the signs. That was like really, really easy to understand, honestly, or at least enough to give me, I feel like, a platform to then go off and do more
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
So then once you
Well, and that's what I mean though, is that if we get those basics down, then you can dive deep. And I
Right.
think what people run into sometimes is they dive too deep in one area before having the whole framework.
Right.
yes,
So you're
Anyway,
saying build
so-
the house, then get
Yeah.
the house plants.
Exactly.
then paint the
Yes.
walls puce. Okay, so
Right.
once you do kind of get a further understanding of the framework, how can one use a birth chart? Let's say they've done the research and kind of looked into all of the different alignments and meanings of the houses and planets and signs.
Right.
Can you use it for predictions? And is compatibility really a thing? Is that real, or is that the stuff
Yes.
of magazines,
Okay. Yeah, and so I'm probably going to meander a bit as I answer this, so
Totally
please redirect me if
fine.
I forget something.
Totally fine.
So one of the main ways that you can use a birth chart, and one of the main ways that I use it in my work personally and professionally, is as a means of self-understanding, especially in terms of innate strengths and weaknesses, areas for growth, areas of compatibility and harmony. So like I was saying before, if I look at my chart and I see that I have a sun in Cancer, well, sometimes our society shapes us in ways that push us away from the natural harmony of our chart. So your chart is kind of like if you're living in alignment with your chart, you are going to feel good. You're going to feel, I mean, unless you have like some kind of massive health problem, but you're going to feel harmonious in your life. You're going to feel aligned. And if you're not living in alignment with your chart, you're probably not going to feel like that. You're probably going to feel crappy or repressed or stifled. And I think that especially like a lot of watery men, that happens in our society, you know, that sort of taught toxic masculinity and not to be as sensitive as they are, and then they repress it, and then they have all these problems.
Amen.
And so as we learn about our birth chart, it really gives us permission to be ourselves, because then we say, oh, I'm a sun in Cancer, like I'm going to be sensitive, or oh, like I have an Aries moon, I should be adventurous, like I'm supposed to be somewhat adventurous in some way, or, you know, or it makes sense that my emotions are volatile. Aries is volatile, you know, and then as we understand that, it helps us develop compassion for ourselves, compassion for other people, and it gives us a way of moving through life that honors sort of our innate strengths and helps us develop our weaknesses, and then that's very satisfying. So Stephen Forrest, who is an evolutionary astrologer, I consider myself to be an evolutionary astrologer too, he teaches that in order to be happy, you have to feed your sun and moon.
Right.
And so your sun tells you your core sense of purpose, and your moon is sort of your emotional satisfaction. But them paired with the rising sign, or the big three, what they call the primal triad. But the sun and moon specifically, when people aren't feeding their sun and moon, is when we tend to see people who feel very stifled by their life, very unhappy, very dissatisfied. So I know as a Cancer sun that I need to nurture that Cancerian side of myself. And as I know as a Libra moon, that it's important for me to nurture that. And this is also where we see the houses, right? Because you had asked about houses. So I have a 7th house sun. So relationships are important to me. So it's not just that I'm a Cancer. It's also that I'm a Cancer who really needs to manifest Cancerian energy in the context of relationship. And that can be a romantic partnership. It can also be close friends. My moon is in the 10th house. Career is super important to me. You know, I will say I feel like I've crossed the line to where you're like at risk of burnout, but like I innately, left to my own devices, am like always doing something productive, always building something that has something to do with that 10th house energy. And I think that's because that's where my moon is, and that's also where my Pluto is. Now you had asked about prediction and compatibility. So compatibility first. So yes, there is something to compatibility. What I think is more complicated than we see on the websites, though, is that it's about more than just, oh, Aries and Sagittarius are both fire signs, so you guys are going to be so good together. Like, it has a lot to do with where your moon is and how where your sun is, your moon is, where your Venus is, and where your Mars is. Those are my top 4 that I do if I'm looking at relationships, although the other planets matter too. But to me, that's the top 4. And your if you have a really harmonious sun connection with someone and a harmonious moon connection, or Mars and Venus, you probably will click well with them on some level in terms of a relationship or a friendship or a sexual chemistry. So like usually if somebody has a harmonious connection between the moon, Mars, and Venus, or any of those, there's probably going to be some kind of sexual chemistry. Like Mars trine Mars is probably going to bring that. But again, so this is the stuff where you're getting really specific. So you're not going to find that in a book that says that's just based on sun sign astrology.
No, this is fascinating. Damn it, I wish I could take notes, but luckily we're recording this.
Yeah, I know. I considered asking you to repeat something, and I was like, Emily, you have it on tape. Like, listen to it later.
We can listen to it later. Yeah, because this is fascinating, and I immediately want to go.
Because I thought the answer would be that compatibility was, but that makes so much more sense. Is that it's just a bigger picture, but yeah, that it can in fact affect how you communicate.
Oh, it can vary. Yeah, well, like for example, if my Mercury is trine your sun, then I probably communicate really well with you naturally. And you probably stimulate me mentally. So there are those types of connections. But, you know, again, it's the thing where you have to look at the whole thing, because we could have that, but then we could also have Mars square Mars and just butt heads. You know?
Can I ask a purely glossary Oh my God.
Glossary?
Glossary.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
It amazes me how poor I am at talking sometimes. A glossary question. So you've been saying certain phrases, and I've been nodding like I know what you're talking about. But for
yeah.
our listeners at home, when you say trine and
Right.
conjunct
Yeah. Okay.
and
Yes.
square, and what does
Yeah,
that mean?
Okay, yeah, and so let me just say, so I'm talking about aspects,
Okay.
and aspects are the relationships that planets have with each other in the sky based on the angles that they form.
Okay, yeah, it's like geometry.
Yes,
Okay.
and this is something where you see aspects within your own chart based on the planets and how they're arranged at the time of your birth, and you also see aspects with a chart that you would, the way your chart interacts with another person's chart. So like if you lay them on top of each other, how those planets interact with each other. And I would say that to me, aspects really give flavor and depth and lots of specificity to charts. I think that the aspects are where we find the things that just jolt us. And it's like, oh my God, how did you know that? A lot of that in my experience comes from the aspects. So the main aspects that I work with, again, as a classical modern astrologer, there are more than these, but I keep it pretty simple, are the major aspects and one extra. So the major aspects are the conjunction. So this is when planets have a 0-degree relationship. They are right on top of each other in the chart, right on top of each other in the sky. So that joins them together. They function as a unit. And there's emphasis with them. And, it depends on what the planets are and what the signs are, whether that is harmonious or not usually, but it's empowering and it's fusing. So when I say, for example, that I have Moon conjunct Pluto, that means that when I was born, Pluto and the moon were near each other in the sky. And so that means in my personal life, and you were talking about astrology, birth chart astrology, and how it relates to your own psychological understanding and healing journey and whatnot. So for me, when I understood that I have Moon conjunct Pluto, and I actually have a lot more going on with Pluto than that, it's also square my sun and a bunch of other things. When I understood that is when I first understood that this super intense scorpionic energy was just part of my life. It was just part of the fabric of what I am. And before I learned that, I had this idea of, I'll just reach this point in meditation one day where all of this goes away, right? I'll just become so healed and so still and so balanced that these tremendous inflows of Plutonian energy, I didn't know that that's what they were at the time, but now I do, that these will just go away or they won't affect me anymore.
Oh my God.
And when I understood Pluto conjunct Moon, Pluto square Sun, it's also sextile my ascendant, a bunch of other stuff.
Wow.
I was like, no, like this is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So the real answer is to embrace this energy as part of who and what you are and work with it because it's not going away. And then that was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
it changed the whole way I related to my emotions and my thoughts and my sense of self. So in terms of how you can psychologically use astrology, I mean, that's one right there. But so that's a conjunction. Then you have a sextile, which is a 60-degree relationship, and that is one of stimulation and ease. It's harmonious, but things are different. So it's 60 degrees apart, and so usually this is between like signs that are in different elements but are harmonious. So like air and fire or water and earth. And not always, but usually, and I'm just going to keep it basically and just talk about it in that respect. So to me, what a sextile is it's like your friend who you get along with and you have a lot in common with, but you're like also from a different culture. So your differences are actually feeding each other's learning and growth process, but you're also similar enough that it's not this source of major tension. So I think a sextile is actually one of the coolest relationships because you are stimulating each other and you can learn a lot from each other, but you still really get along. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So a square is a 90-degree relationship, and this is friction. These are planets that they share, or they're signs that share a quality. So they'll like be cardinal, fixed, or mutable. But they, unless they're the exception that I was talking about before that I'm not going into, which I guess now I have to talk about a little bit. So the one thing I'll just say is that, okay, so sometimes when things are on the cusp, this doesn't line up perfectly. So like if I have a 29 degree planet in the 29th degree of Cancer, like that can be sextile something that's in the earlier degrees of another sign. So it's not fitting the pattern that I'm talking about right now. But generally speaking, a sextile is between planets of elements that are harmonious with each other but different. And a square is planets is happening with traditionally or typically with they share a quality, so they're cardinal, fixed, or mutable, but they're conflicting in that the elements are not harmonious. So for example, water and fire. So between Cancer and Aries. So there's friction here. These do not agree with each other. This is like, the way I like to describe squares is it's like the person in class with you who says things that you would never say, and on some level you kind of disagree with, but you also know like they have a point even though you would never say that and that's not your perspective. So you're like, do you know what I mean though? You know that person,
Absolutely.
right? So like, yeah, so you're actually benefiting from that, but it's uncomfortable. And yeah, so, but the square on the birth chart is when you have that inside of yourself. So you have these parts of yourself that are butting heads, that don't understand each other, but that are where there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of opportunity for growth if you can figure out how to work with it and integrate it. So a trine is a 120 degree relationship. It forms a triangle if you put them all three together. And a trine is super harmonious. These are signs of the same element usually. And so there is this understanding and this flow and this ease. This is like being from the same family, but in a family where you get along. And the thing about trines is that they can make us very lucky and have a lot of flow and grace to a degree. But then the challenge of them is that they're not often inspiring of effort, and so we can become lazy. So the example of that I use for trines is like the trust fund baby. Like someone who has a lot of trines is like the trust fund baby of astrology. Like they, because they have all this money, they're not necessarily motivated to push themselves very much, so they can just kind of coast through life. So that's the challenge sometimes when we have a lot of trines. And then the opposition, which is a 180 degree relationship, so it's a polarity, a spectrum, they're half the sky apart, is also a relationship of conflict. There's tension is the word that's often used with oppositions, and they are fundamentally different, but they also complete a polarity or a spectrum together. So this is Scorpio and Taurus, Cancer and Capricorn. And I actually think Cancer and Capricorn is one of the best ways to understand it, because Cancer and Capricorn to me archetypally, Cancer is mom of the zodiac and Capricorn is dad. So even though they're fundamentally different, they are complementing each other. So there's always some kind of thread joining in opposition, but they are opposed, they are different. And when we have them inside our chart, one of us wants to go in one direction and one of us wants to go in the other. And as with everything in astrology, it's really about understanding and integration. And then the last one I'll talk about is the quincunx, or the inconjunct, which is a minor aspect, but a lot of people use it. It's 150 degrees, and it is something where these two signs at that degree just don't understand each other at all. They're not a harmonious element, and they're not a harmonious quality. So for example, in my birth chart, I have a sun in Cancer, and I have Sagittarius rising. So Cancer is a water sign, and it's cardinal. Sagittarius is a fire sign, and it's mutable. So they don't have anything in common, and they don't understand each other, and what one wants to do is not what the other wants to do. And so we have these forces within us that really want different things, like even more so than an opposition. At least with an opposition, it's like they have elements that are normally harmonious, but with an inconjunct, it's like they're not even speaking the same language. So that's where we have this oddness and this tension, and we learn how to work with it. But the thing about those aspects is that, to me, that is where you start getting into the real details of astrology. Like, you look at somebody's chart, and you would say, so for example, Kate, you have Moon square Jupiter, and it's really tight. So when you try to initiate projects, even though there might be a lot of energy, there's probably also a emotional conflict going on there, and a sense of stress, and a sense of
let the record show Kate is covering her face and laughing.
But right? But you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. Yeah, but that's the thing, though, is that this is...
Are you crying?
No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
But that is something where when people say get specific with astrology, okay, like there's a way to interpret what I said that sounds like it would apply to anybody, like, oh, change is hard. But no, but like it's specifically in your chart, and I would not say that to someone.
No, you
So
just
your
read me to
moon-
filth. I just felt so attacked in the best way.
Well, all with love, but
Of
that
course.
that is moon square Jupiter. Now, somebody who has moon trine Jupiter, I'm not saying that to.
Mm-hmm.
They have a harmonious flow between their moon and Jupiter. They probably feel
Good
really
for
good
them.
yeah, but the thing about squares, though, is that the nice thing about squares when they're difficult is that we tend to be more apt to cover our bases and do better work because we're not as assured that we're just going to hit it out of the park. I mean, someone who has moon trine Jupiter might have so much self-confidence that they don't even spell check the blog post.
Yeah.
So, but that is the kind of stuff that you see when you work with aspects.
Whew, that was heavy.
And so when people don't work with aspects, it is like taking so much out of the picture. It's taking out these huge details.
That's wild.
Huge details, yeah.
I also love thank you for everything, but also those analogies you gave us are so
Oh,
you're a very
thanks.
good teacher. I feel like I'm absorbing this
Thank
all
you.
really
Everything
well.
is becoming very understandable, which is great.
Thank you.
And
That's
it's all
what
we do here.
It's all just clicking. It's all just clicking because I love astrology and horoscope stuff. I listen to like my daily horoscope on like a playlist, a podcast, and I'm on Instagram accounts all the time, and I'm reading. I subscribe to Chani Nicholas and Rob Bresney and all this stuff, but it's like never really knew what it meant.
Right. Well, and here's the thing too. So I'll say this too as somebody who does astrology online, is there's always this tension between how jargony do you get because it turns people off because it's like the eyes glazing over.
Yeah.
And I'll say I'm really happy with the way that my astrology blog is on Modern Witch. But I had a year before writing for Modern Witch where I wrote on my own website and I did the super self-indulgent astrology blog where I used all the jargon and it was like 2,500 words and just way too long, And the thing is, though, is that it's the difficulty with astrology on the internet is that anytime you start getting general, you lose specific relevance.
Yeah.
And
It was
so
specific.
like what I get to do now, because I get to like just talk about the moon and a little bit about the month, but I don't have to go super into like what's going on for the next 2 weeks because that's where it's like you really need your own chart.
Yeah.
And you need to know like it's not just it's Mercury retrograde, it's like it's Mercury retrograde and what is happening in the resonant zones of your birth chart with that Mercury retrograde. Because if a lot is happening, it's probably going to be a really significant Mercury retrograde for you. And if a lot isn't happening, then it's probably going to be more of just a ho-hum whatever. What are the resonance points of that Mercury retrograde? And are they lighting up things in your chart? And if they are, it's going to be more significant for you. And if they're not, it's not.
Yeah. That makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a retrograde now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just went into retrograde on the 31st.
Yeah, 31st.
Yeah.
Oh, and here I thought that it was just that the new iPhone came out and I was getting into forced obsolescence. Could be a little bit of both.
I know the last retrograde I felt very hard. Hopefully this one not so much. Anyway, well, you wanted to ask your question too, right?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of covered this, but the question, or yeah, you sort of started to talk about this, but the question that I had was about that psychological assessment side of charts. Like, how can I use this to help me see places where I have blind spots,
Right.
where I have weaknesses?
Yeah.
How can I,
Absolutely.
check
Yeah.
this for untapped strengths that I might have that
Sure.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the birth chart is going to show your kind of innate energetic composition. It's kind of like the matrix of your being, right? And so, I was talking earlier about the whole concept of feeding your sun and moon, but I think really the birth chart gives us permission to be ourselves, to own ourselves, and it gives us more information about what that is. Okay, so a really good example for me, I have Mercury in Gemini, Mercury, the planet of the intellect, Gemini, a planet of lots of information, seeking lots of information, craving lots of information, very curious, but also not necessarily doing the super deep dive all the time. So a good example of how I have applied that in my life to helpful effect is that I really struggled with reading lots of one book at a time. Like, I am not someone, unless it's the most captivating book ever, who can sit down and read 60 pages of a book. Like, I get so distracted. It's just not my thing. But what I can do is read 10 pages of 6 books. And so when I learned that little trick, all of a sudden I started really loving reading, and I started reading a lot of different things. And that satisfies my Gemini side that wants to jump from this to this and that. But then I'm still covering a lot of material. And I actually got that trick from a friend of mine who also has Mercury in Gemini, who didn't even know her astrology very well, but she just happened to do it. And of course, like, whenever I tell people I do that, they're like, oh my God, reading lots of books. And I'm like, this is what we did for like our whole education.
Right. Don't you remember
Like,
school?
Yeah.
So we've all done this before, but that works for me. And so that's something where knowing that about myself from the chart really helps me just accept that and honor that. And it also helps me know, though, that like one of my strengths is that I can memorize lots of little bits of information. But then one of my weaknesses is that I don't really, a lot of the time, at least intellectually, like to go much deeper than that.
Yeah.
So, so Instagram has been great for me as a Mercury and Gemini person, because I can fit a meme's worth of information on a meme. But if someone wanted to talk for 20 minutes about rose quartz, I would be completely at a loss.
Right.
And
it, like, I hear what you're saying, which is that instead of trying to spend a lot of time figuring out how to teach yourself how to read 60 pages at once, you can instead say, okay, that's just not in who I am. That's okay. Let me do this other thing instead.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Retool
and then
and
I would
adjust.
say,
Yeah.
and I would say too, that I think where it's very, very powerful is the society that we live in, to speak in very broad general terms, tends to honor certain ways of being, certain types of personality. Validation, success, conventional success tends to go with certain types of being. And if we aren't that, then there's all this pressure to conform to that. And if we try to conform to that, the psychological results, and I can say this as a therapist and an astrologer, tends to be stress, anxiety, depression, self-hatred, dissatisfaction, emptiness, boredom, confusion, isolation. I could go on and on.
Emily and I are
so
just
what's-
nodding. Yeah.
Like, yes. Yes.
It's very common. But the thing is, when you see your chart and you learn about your chart, then you start to learn, oh, this is more how I'm supposed to be. This is more what harmonizes with me. This is where I have certain innate inclinations, and it's beneficial for me to feed them.
Yeah.
For example, in my chart I was talking about, I have Pluto conjunct the moon in the 10th house. Well, one of the things that can mean is I am drawn to really intense emotional work. So if I wasn't a psychotherapist, I would probably be doing like deep healing of some kind with people, or some type of art that's really interested in those types of topics, because to me that feels resonant. I am very drawn to the shadow. I'm very drawn to intensity. But for someone else, they're not. But maybe they're drawn to something that scares the crap out of me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, please, let's talk about our deepest feelings and wounds and the things that we're afraid of, but don't put me in a prison. I don't want to work in the prison system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I have friends who want that.
Yeah.
Who want that. That's their challenge. Or like, I used to work in hospice. I loved that. And there are people I know who are like, oh, I could never work in hospice. But then they were working somewhere that like I don't want to work in.
Yeah.
So this is part of where astrology gives us that permission to own those parts of ourselves, and once we own them, we can develop them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's validation and
absolutely.
self-awareness.
Well, and let me just tell you that a lot of psychotherapy is validation too. And a lot of what we're validating is that it's okay to be a human being.
Ugh, girl, you're telling me.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense.
That
And-
was like
and, you
what
know,
my therapist used to tell me all the time. It was like, it's okay. You're human.
right.
Why do you insist on
Right.
believing you're not
Well,
human?
but here's the thing. That's not what we grow up with,
Yeah,
most of us.
yeah.
We don't grow up with that. We grow up with you need to be thinner, smarter, faster, taller, curvier, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever the message of the day is. And billions of dollars are spent every year to convince us that we need all these things so that we can be valuable as people.
Right.
Right? So it's like...
But that's not true
when we're-
because the planets love you just the way you are.
Yeah, the most
Exactly.
radical anti-consumerism thing you can do is love yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Right, and what I love about astrology is that astrology says not only can you just love yourself because everybody deserves to love themselves as they are, but also like here's some ways that you can develop yourself that are actually very unique to you.
Yeah.
And that help you understand the emotions and the thoughts and the inclinations that you have. And then you can say, oh, I don't have to be what my society or my culture or my community is telling me to be if it radically diverges from this. It's actually healthier for me to work in the direction of my chart. So that's one thing I would say too. So unfortunately, because of the way that mental health is licensed in America, I'm not able to use astrology with psychotherapy very much. But if I could, and one day maybe I'll be able to, what I would do is I would say to people, okay, you're coming in and telling me that you feel emotionally detached, but you have a Scorpio sun. So I know that is not how you are supposed to be happy, healthy, content. So let's work on chipping at this iceberg until you get your sensitivity up. Because I know from the chart that once you have opened to your emotions and integrated them in a healthy way, you are going to feel way more satisfied as a human being.
Yeah.
And the chart tells me that.
If you could get a license to practice both therapy and astrology at the same time, I would move to your town and hire you immediately. Shut up and take my money.
I would love to do it.
That's my
but
two favorite things.
Unfortunately, and here's the thing. This will be my momentary Sagittarian soapbox. Is that Christian people can talk about Christianity in therapy.
Ugh, yeah.
They can talk about that and they can get bill insurance and all of that because it is so normalized in our culture for people to be Christian that it's like not weird for a Christian therapist to be like, and now let's pray together. Whereas like if I bring
would be
up
so
astrology,
weirded out by that, but go on.
then it's like,
Yeah.
well, right, but they would only do, but like there are
Right, but there
websites
are-
like
yeah.
faith counseling, which is for that. And so I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying let's expand that so that people who have other spiritual or religious beliefs can also work with them in therapy. Because when we're talking about the therapeutic journey, when you weave in spirituality, it adds this whole layer of power and depth and access to healing resources that are not there the same way if you can't talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully one day.
Yeah.
Amen. I totally
Agreed.
agree, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we thank you so much. Is there anything else that you think that people should know about natal charts or about your own practice or about astrology in general? that
Any
we haven't
parting
covered
thoughts?
before we do a tarot draw?
I guess the one thing I would say is that just in a nutshell, when I'm talking, and I might post a blog about this on the Modern Witch blog in the future. I'm planning to, but I may not. So the main things that I would say is that if you want to learn the basics of astrology, to be conversational, learn maybe 5 keywords for all of the signs, all of the houses, all of the planets, all of the aspects. Learn what the nodes of the moon are, learn what Chiron is, and then learn the different quadrants of the birth chart. So those are the things to just try to memorize.
Yeah, easy
And
peasy.
if you do like 5 a day, it's like 10 days.
You make flashcards.
Oh,
And then-
flashcards. Ooh, flashcards.
I've been thinking about
Yeah.
flashcards a lot
Ooh,
lately.
let's
but
make
that's
witchy
another conversation.
flashcards.
But then once you've got that memorized, that's when you can do the deeper dives into like, let me read a 10-page entry about what it is to be a Scorpio.
Right. That makes sense.
This is so helpful.
It's so cool.
I also
I'm
feel
glad.
better equipped to have this conversation now at this point of our journey than I
Right.
was when we first spoke. Because
Yeah.
I feel like when we first spoke, I was like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, we were
Well, and
still learning. We
Yeah.
are still learning.
We
but
always
we're-
learning.
Well, I'm still learning too. Astrology is a bottomless rabbit hole. I do not even think. I feel like there are so many people I know who know way more about astrology than I do. One thing I would say though is I try to stay in my lane. Like, I'm not going off into all these other asteroids that I don't know anything about. The thing I was going to say though is that the reason why I emphasize just memorizing these key things is because it just takes a second in astrology in a conversation for the eyes to glaze over, and then it's over. You know what I mean? It's like there's no going back from that moment. But that is the moment at a party usually where I'll be like, well, then let me just see your chart. And then it's a great icebreaker. So if you're like, oh, I have social anxiety, I don't know what to do, learn astrology.
Yes.
Because it is wonderful at a party.
I was just thinking when we were talking earlier, I was like, damn, how can I get my hands on every single person I know's birth chart so I know how
It's so
to
fast.
deal with them?
And that's also what I would say is when people are like, oh, how do I learn astrology? In addition to memorizing everything, contextualize it within your own chart. Like, look and see where things are in your chart and how it is there, and then learn about the charts of other people. Because it's like, when you're trying to learn, like, what is Taurus? Well, one great way to learn that is to look up the birthdays on, like, Facebook of everyone you know who is a Taurus. And be like, what do all of these people have in common?
That's how I memorized all of the major attributes of the signs. Was like I assign a person, like I have a person that pops up in my brain of every sign, and they represent. They're not, of course, they're complex human beings, but like they represent those main attributes, and that's how I know
them. Well,
them.
the thing is, once you can feel that underlying similarity, then that is the energetic essence of the sign, and then that's where you can start to have your own information about what the sign is, rather than just, well, this is what I memorized about it.
Right.
So that's where somebody can say, oh, I have Mercury in Scorpio, and you can think, well, I know that this is what Mercury feels like, and this is what Scorpio feels like, so if I put those two together, what is formed by that? And then it's not just repetition of something that you've studied. Yeah.
Right.
I love it.
Oh, beautiful. So we end every episode with a tarot draw. Dargados, do you
Yay.
have a deck that you want to draw from, or do you want us to do it here?
We can use mine. Okay, so we are using the Radiant Wise Spirit Tarot deck.
Ooh.
And do you just want me to draw a card?
Yeah, we just like to pick
That's
a
all.
card,
And then we just talk about it. And
then
if
talk
you
about
want
what it
to,
means.
if you want to, from a Hermetic Kabbalah standpoint, talk about how it relates, or anything like that. But I don't
let's see
know.
if there's...
Whatever you've got. Tarot.
Oh, I love
If it ties
tarot.
in.
Okay, this card just fell out
Or, I
of the
mean,
deck, so we're
astrology
going to
if
go
it
with
ties
it. Okay, I think this is a powerful card. So here we have the Eight of Swords reversed.
Ooh.
Da, 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 da.
Oh wow, yes, the swords.
The swords.
That is gorgeous.
It really does look beautiful.
That artwork is. So what do you feel like that was the card you said that just fell out?
Yeah, Eight of Swords reversed.
And what do you think that means?
To me, Eight of Swords reversed often is one of those cards that I tend to read as getting out of the situation that is implied by the card right side up. So sort of the inverted meaning. So Eight of Swords reversed. So for the people who are just listening, it is an image of a woman who is bound and blindfolded and surrounded by 8 swords.
Yeah, it's
Almost enclosed by the swords. And so when it's right side up, I feel like it's definitely sort of being trapped and being stifled and being oppressed, sometimes by our ideas, sometimes by the ideas of others, sometimes by our past experiences. And when it's reversed, I feel like it's coming out of that. So it's cutting through some of those restrictions, letting some of those restrictions go, and really opening to something new and something where we're able to let some of those defenses down. To me, this is one of those cards in the deck. There are a few that really seem to evidence defensiveness, being protected from difficulty. And so when it's reversed, I feel like she's coming out of that. She's becoming free from those restrictions. And yeah.
I love that.
That's nice. I like
love that
breaking through.
interpretation.
Awesome. So obviously we could talk to you forever. But for our listeners who want to get in touch with you more, who want to hire you or learn more about you and your work, how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so on social media, my Facebook is Durgadas Alon Doriel. I have a page, which I don't do very much with, but it is there. The main page I do is Instagram, same name. And then I also have the website, which is www.durgadosalondoriel.com. And then I write for modernwitch.com, and that's on that website and Patheos Pagan as well. And those are the main ways. Yeah. And then my book, The Little Work, Magic to Transform Your Everyday Life, comes out from Llewellyn Worldwide in March of next year.
Amazing. And
We
we'll
can't
link to
wait.
all of this
Yeah.
in our Instagram and in our
Thank you.
on our website, blog post. Yes. I mean, we're such a fan.
Yeah.
Your, like I was saying, your social media posts, your Instagram
Thank
posts
you
are
very
like
much.
something I look forward to every day. So
Thank you.
I
Thank
highly
you. I'm
recommend
glad.
our listeners follow you.
Yeah,
Thank
check
you.
out Durgadas.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's really nice to hear that too, because I feel like it's nice to know that people actually are getting something out of it. You know, I mean,
Oh,
I feel
so
like,
much.
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's nice to know. You know what I mean? It's nice to know.
good
that,
to hear
like,
it, though, yeah.
Yes. No, they're so helpful. They're so easy to understand. Like you said, quick snapshot of like, here's some things to think about for this crystal or this
Right.
moon phase coming up, and it's really
Yeah,
great.
So cool.
yeah,
Love it.
and we've reposted them a couple times
yeah,
too.
and we'll
Thank you.
continue to do so.
We will continue to do so because I feel like there are quite a lot of witches in the Instagram community, and some of them do this where they will kind of talk about what's coming up, or they'll use their platform for education, but not many, honestly. I
and
feel
the
like
way
Yeah.
you do it is
the
so,
way you do it is so
great.
Thank you.
and the artwork is so funny and cute and like
Thank you.
eye-catching. Yeah, so it's great.
Well, I feel like a lot of people are kind of. It's funny, right? Because hold on, let me just. Yeah, so it's kind of funny because, like, you sort of almost inevitably in a platform like that get a little bit pigeonholed. So for me, I feel like there are some times where, like, maybe I want to make a point more, an edgy point or something, and I don't even know like how to do that totally. I do it in my story sometimes, but like I just don't even know where to start with that. But I think that where I came from with Instagram is that I really wanted people to feel empowered with different types of education that is not presented in an intimidating way. And so whether it's learning about a crystal, learning about an herb, learning about a basic spell, learning about how to read tarot, it's accessible. I'm presenting safe information, and that's really important for me because I think a lot of what my book is about, and I think a lot of what big resurgence and interest in magic right now hopefully is about, is that we have so much power, and that's not what we're taught.
Yeah.
And so it's hard even to believe that at first. But the more we practice magic and the more we realize, oh my God, I have all of this power, we gain this freedom. And then with that freedom, hopefully we can create a more compassionate world for everyone.
Oh, I
So,
love that.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I think that's a perfect place to end.
yeah, that's, uh-oh, we got a poll quote.
Are you kidding me? I have like 10.
I know.
Okay, so well, that'll do it for us for this week. Of course, obviously for Witchcast Podcast, follow us on Instagram. Leave us a nice review.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
Don't forget to, you can email us at witchcastpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
Durgadas, thanks so much again for being
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
We love you. And
until
until
next
next time, Hex
yeah!
Cause it's Witchcast.
You're like, I'm a Scorpio. Don't tell me anything that anybody can know.
Well, my first thought was maybe the most Scorpio question, which is, do you see any weaknesses and how can I fix them?